strongly encourage you to take part in this essay only because this is a very current and very important topic. You know, we've been facing heat wave for a long time. And so it's a matter of concern for all of us to know what this area is all about. So, you know, again, a very strong encouragement to you to submit an essay on this topic. This essay is divided into two categories. First, for the undergraduate, and second, for the postgraduate. And the prizes for the essay, therefore, corresponding to each category. So for the first category, for the undergraduate essays, the top two winners will be given free entry into the Global Forum on Bioethics in Research that will be held in Kuala Lumpur in November. And this registration is normally not cheap. So, you know, yeah, if you win the essay, it is really, you know, a big step towards knowing more about bioethics. So two top essays, one for undergraduate, two for undergraduate and two for postgraduate. You will be given free registration to GFBR. And then the top essay for each category will have your essay posted on GFBR website, which is really a global network of global health researchers who actually come together to exchange ideas. So that's another, you know, great leap forward if you can get your essay onto their website. And the third one, which you will also be very interested, is the cash prize. The first prize for each category is 500, and the second prize is 300. So with that, you know, I believe that our prizes should be sufficiently attractive to you to consider seriously submitting an essay. Now, for us to actually help you forward also in your essay preparation, we have prepared a video together with the World Health Organization and one of our co-principal investigators, Dr. Vu Teck Chuan, with two of the Universiti Malaya law faculty students, where there was a Q&A session on this topic of ethics in health research and climate change. I have put on the chat box the link to the video, so please access that. It will give you a very good idea of how you could approach this essay. Now, if you have any questions, ideally just unmute your mic and speak. Or if you like, you can type your questions into the chat box and we will take it from there. This is the team comprising the network. The principal investigators come from Oxford University. They're from Dr. Muhammad Firdaus from Faculty of Law, Dr. Sharon Kaur, who is here with us from Faculty of Law. And then you have also Tamara Lysette from Sydney University, Dr. Vu Teck Chuan from SingHealth Singapore, and Dr. Serene Ong from National University of Singapore. These are our co-principal investigators. And advising us and giving us direction and guidance on how we could develop the network, we have a board of what we call advisory board members comprising renowned bioethicists, academics, and practitioners coming from, you know, renowned universities and established organizations. And supporting the team is the administration, which is housed at the Faculty of Law, Universiti Malaya. Komati is currently here with us, helping us with the tech part, and Dr. Jaya Nathan is the project manager. Oh, sorry, is the network manager. In October last year, we had our inaugural conference to actually define our vision, our mission, and our values that would guide us as we move along. So we came up with our vision, which is to be the leading resource for bioethics in Southeast Asia, inspiring local, regional, and global solutions. And this is our mission. We want to promote respectful dialogue and diversity. We want to have an inclusive, vibrant, and sustainable bioethics community. We also want to create awareness and build up capacity in bioethics in this region. And we want this network to be a platform to raise unheard and unrepresented voices in bioethics. And for all this, we do hope that our work will actually produce meaningful research and context-specific solutions. Our values, we have come out with 5 values, which we, after discussing with the participants in the Langkawi workshop, and they are from Southeast Asia, we came up with these 5 values, which we think are more akin to our culture, our sensitivity in Southeast Asia. The network has 2 thematic areas. First is with regard to emerging issues relating to healthcare and research with mobile and marginalized populations, people like the migrants are just an example. And the second thematic area is challenges and opportunities presented by emergent health and biomedical technologies. While these are our 2 thematic areas, we are also very open to engaging into other bioethics areas as well. Now, so far, we've conducted a number of activities. In our first year, we built up our network infrastructure. We had advisory board meeting to guide us, steering committee meeting to guide us. We engaged with stakeholders in Southeast Asia. We had a Delphi survey in Langkawi to gather input and build consensus for a research agenda. What are the activities that we have done so far? We have offered competitive research grants and professional growth fellowship grants. We also have conducted webinars. We have conducted conferences, and we are also providing scholars in Southeast Asia who submit articles to the Asian Bioethics Review, where support will be given to the authors with regard to their content and also their language. We also plan to have research exchange programs with Johns Hopkins University and Oxford University. You can know more about our website by joining our mailing list and visiting our website at this address, right? That's a brief overview of our network. Now, I will now pass the time to Dr. Sharon Kaur to say something about research into health and climate change, and then we will take the questions from you. Over to you, Sharon.
Thanks, Pixan, and hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. So we are very excited as a network to be partnering with the GFBR on this for this conference. So as Pixan mentioned, and you can imagine, climate change has really become something that's gone to the top of most of our agenda, and we can see it every day, right? Our climate is getting hotter, we're getting worse rainfall, we're getting floods, and it's really becoming a big concern. And we know that there is a huge impact on health from climate, both either directly or indirectly. And the GFBR this year, so the GFBR has a meeting every year, and it's the preeminent global forum on bioethics and research. And this year they're looking at climate change. And it's really interesting and really challenging, because what we're doing differently this year when looking at climate change is we're trying to figure out, how do we, as bioethicists, as people that work in health and health research, what do we do? How do we take into account the climate when we are thinking about what research to do? What does it mean when we're looking at climate change? Who do we talk to? Are there particular groups of people that we should really be very concerned about? So how should policymakers, especially for the essay, right, be thinking about in terms of what are the ethical or what are the moral issues when thinking about what type of research we should be doing, who we should be talking to when we're doing this research. Also, even when we're doing health research, how we do the research, what does it mean to be conscious of climate change, and what are the ethical issues involved therein? And it's really challenging for all of us because we're used to working in our silos. We're used to be bioethicists and research ethics, and we know all the principles of research ethics. But when we're looking at environmental ethics, and they come with a different set of principles, they come with inter and intra-generational duties. They come with the notion of solidarity. They come with the notion of just compensation, epistemic justice. They come with notions of we can't look at just what is important to humans. What about the non-human world? So that there are many different ethical concepts that are used in environmental ethics. So it's really thinking about how do we think about it in the context of when we bring together health research as well as climate change. And because we are doing it in Malaysia this year, we've opened up just to Malaysian students this essay competition to think about ethics and what should policymakers do. So really we're looking for something, I think, quite local, where you don't have to look at international issues, but just look around you and think, what do policymakers need to do? And what are the ethics? What are the moral issues or the moral compasses that should guide policymakers? Hi.
Yeah, hi.
Hi, Alicia. Are you thinking of submitting an essay for this competition?
Yeah, it's a very new topic, so I am looking to dip my toes in it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
As I mentioned, we would strongly encourage you to do so because 2,500 if you're undergraduate, 3,500 is really very, very achievable for such an important topic. But do remember that we want to look at ethics, we want to look at policymakers and the Malaysian context.
Yeah.
And
So
of course,
just
yeah, go on, sorry.
no, sorry. I was
Mm.
just going to ask Alicia, so what part or what aspect of this do you think you would be interested to write about?
The topic is very new to me, but what I have in mind would probably be the first thing that comes to mind would be marginalized communities, I guess.
Okay.
Maybe the underprivileged and how, well, when I think of climate change, one thing that comes to mind is how and the underprivileged and marginalized communities are disproportionately affected by its effects rather than those who um have who are more well endowed with their resources. Yeah, that's one thing. But the topic is very new to me, so I'm afraid
Yeah.
I can't.
No, but
I
absolutely, that's a really good point, right? So
Mhm.
when we're thinking about writing this essay, what are the what is the role of ethics? So when policymakers are looking at, or researchers, when they're actually going to do research in climate change, what should be on their mind? And definitely marginalized populations are um, disproportionately affected, as you say. And so just, sort of exploring what are issues of justice, what are issues of epistemic injustice, how do we persuade policymakers that actually when you're going to do research, you should really be thinking about doing research with maybe migrant populations. You should really be thinking about the workers that are standing in the middle of the sun. What about them? What are their health needs? And so the policymakers may come back to you and say, but why, right? Half of them are not even our nationals. Half of them can't even vote. And so you really want to be able to write that essay to tell them, well, these are some of the reasons. And so that's a really important thing, marginalized, even indigenous populations. So that's also a really important area. What happens when they lose their livelihoods or when they lose the forests and the areas that they are actually using for their livelihoods? And what knowledge do they have, right? Do we just do research on them, or do we really think about, and then you think about this One Health thing, where when we're thinking about research generally, usually when I'm just curious, Alicia, are you a science student, a social science student?
I'm an economics student.
Okay, so even in economics, most of the time we're always thinking, we're crunching numbers for humans. How can we make healthcare affordable? What can we do to give access to healthcare to people? But really, when we're thinking about climate change, then we're wondering, should our focus be not just on what is important to humans, but what about the environment? What about the animals? Because whatever we do has that effect. So again, sometimes when we think about marginalized or like indigenous populations, they really live with the earth. They have very different philosophies and they really care for the environment. And sometimes maybe it's worth, when we're thinking, well, when you're doing research, to maybe try and learn, so how do you then say or persuade a researcher that ethically, when you're doing your health research, you shouldn't just be thinking about humans, you should be thinking about the environment, you should be thinking about the animals. If we're thinking about indigenous populations, maybe we should be humble and we should be thinking about learning from the indigenous people. So really go for it. It's like you say, it's new. There's very little that's really been written. People are just starting to think about it. So you will have the pleasure of being one of the few people really thinking about these things. Okay, I'll stop torturing you now that Zaid has bravely switched on his camera. Hi, Zaid, how are you?
Hi. Am I audible? Can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Yep. Okay, sure. Thanks.
So would you like to tell us a little bit about maybe your interest in this
Yeah,
area?
I think I'm in the same boat as Alicia. I am from the field of dentistry, and there is talk about how dentistry impacts climate change. And I just thought, yeah, it's a very small and very niche area of research.
Okay, no, still important. How would dentistry impact on climate change?
There are several work out there that says that the rise in temperature would impact oral health, dry mouth, level of caries. But yeah, when you said that the essay had to be something local, something that local policymakers could implement, I just thought that as a challenge, how do I take all this information and put it in a local scene aspect?
I mean, ideally, why do you think it's a challenge to think about it in the local context?
Well, the work on taking dentistry and how dentistry affects oral health isn't something that policymakers or politicians will think the first thing that impacts climate change, right? So I usually we'll talk about recycling or waste management, all those stuff. But when we talk about healthcare, particularly the very niche area of dentistry, it's a very very small topic that I don't think anybody cares about. Yeah, that would be my challenge.
Yeah, but no, I think people would care, and I think it's important because oral health is so important, and it's also linked to all sorts of other physiological functions if your oral
Okay.
health is bad.
Okay.
And so you're really thinking about what is the impact on climate change. So maybe what is the duty for researchers, right?
Yeah.
So how do you persuade researchers that ethically speaking, rather than researching on some, super duper new way to create, I'm going to say something stupid because I don't know much about science, about, creating a new titanium or a new beautiful invisible denture, that really researchers need to be looking into these climate-based illnesses. And so if so, what is the ethical duty? Why do they do it? I mean, is it intergenerational? Is it intra-generational? As researchers, do you owe it to the next generation that if we don't do this research now, if we don't understand the impact of climate change, and if we don't think about adaptive or mitigation strategies that we can take to help people, what's going to happen to your kids? What's going to happen to your grandkids? So it's just really, and it's all important, but it's just, as you say, trying to point people to the fact that actually climate change has a great impact on health. And we shouldn't
Okay.
just think it's about recycling. We shouldn't just, because as healthcare professionals, how do we make this moral duty, or how do we sort of make this argument that we should be doing certain types of research?
Okay.
Very important.
I'm gonna ask a dumb question here. I've written academic papers, but I've never submitted an essay before, like a essay competition before. So is there a certain format or a certain angle on how we should lay out the paper?
Okay, I'll hand this over to Pixan.
Yep,
Yes,
okay.
sure. If you visit our website, the rules of the competition are there. But
Yep.
basically, if you're an undergraduate, our word limit is 2,500 words. If you are postgraduate, 3,500 words. We encourage you to use footnotes instead of endnotes. So
Okay.
you use footnotes, and the footnotes are also part of the word count. What style you want to use for your footnotes, we leave it to you, but it has to be consistent throughout your essay.
Okay.
Please don't use ChatGPT or any generative
Yes.
AI to generate your results.
Yeah.
And you present it in Times New Roman, font 12, 12, and your spacing is 1.5 spacing. And in your rules on which we put on the website, you need to state your name, your faculty, whether you're an undergraduate or postgraduate, because we need to know what category you are submitting your essay, your metric number, your email, and also your contact number. So that's basically how you would present your essay.
Okay,
Yeah.
sure. Thank you so much.
And I think it is probably less scary than trying to write a journal article. So you're still making arguments. So it's the same concept, right? You're still saying, these are the reasons, these are my arguments. But yeah, I'm not quite sure. I think it's less rigorous as compared to writing an actual article for a journal.
Yeah.
Definitely. And like in your case, I mean, you can zero into one area and talk in depth on dentistry and talk about policymakers. You don't have to cover everything because, 2,500 words or 3,500 words, it's just not possible to cover everything.
Yep. Okay, I'll give it a try. I'll try my best.
You should.
Excellent.
Thank you.
We look forward to receiving your paper. So someone else.
Okay, I have shared the link as well in the chat box.
The link to the video.
Yeah.
Yes.
And also you can
you.
subscribe to our newsletter as well.
Yeah. So we have Christina who's switched on her video. Hi. Would you like to tell us a little bit about the area that you're working in?
Hello. First of all, I would like to thank you to all of the speakers for organizing like an overview to have like some sort of an introduction of what we're going to venture into. So my name is Christina. I'm from Faculty of Law. I'm doing my master's in law. And so I think my essay, I am trying to approach in the sense of how does Malaysia actually look into the Sustainable Development Goals under SDG 3 and SDG 13, whether there is a specific correlation made when it comes to setting indicators or benchmark that Malaysia needs to meet, but at the same time, whether our how do I say this, our current law in respect to medical ethics would be at par or no. I think my position would be similar to, I think it was Alicia, who mentioned that this is rather a new area that I have come into know. And I think the struggle would be not knowing whether or not to highlight more on ethics or Malaysia's awareness on climate change in addressing ethical issues in relation to medical, or it would be the same. I'm not sure where I'm going with it.
Awareness of ethical. So I think probably more the former rather than the latter. So really your essay is you're highlighting what are the reasons, right? What are the ethical reasons that should guide our policymakers, not whether they know or they don't know, but to actually show them these are the arguments as to why you should be taking the climate into consideration when you are doing research. Similarly, when you are deciding what research to do, these are the reasons. So you are going possibly beyond the SDGs, right? So you're actually making an argument to explain why this is and why you should do it and what are the reasons for doing it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
And
also,
yeah.
and also, remember the essay question, which is, what are the ethics that we want our policymakers and our researchers to take into account when they conduct research into health and climate change. So keep within the topic of the essay is very important, because when the judges assess, one of the rubrics is the relevance.
Mm. And you probably, I would advise, at least because it's not a very long essay, to not try and do it all, right? To select an aspect of health research. So either to say, I want to look at how the government or how the ministry prioritizes what research to do. Are you doing research into diseases that affect the climate? Or are you doing diseases that affect the climate, and who are you looking at? Are you trying to find out how to make air conditions more comfortable so that people who live in condominiums won't get a heat rash? Is that a priority? Or should you, as we were talking about earlier with Alicia, should you be thinking about what about the road sweepers? How do we ensure that when they're under the sun every day, what are their risk factors? How do we ensure that they are safe? How long can they be in the sun? So maybe if they used to be in the sun for 2 hours at a run, maybe every half an hour, and then you provide them. So you're asking about what research prioritization, what research you do, or who do you talk to about what research needs to be done? Do you talk to the marginalized populations? Alternatively, you can look at how you do research. So if you already know that you are going to do a certain piece of health research, there are many different ways you can use to do it. Everybody is so excited about using AI these days. But in many ways, AI is very, very resource intensive. It uses a lot of electricity, it uses a lot of power for storage. So if you're just using AI simply because it's kind of cool and everybody is doing it, that may be ethically unsound if we're worried about the climate. Similarly, if you are doing, I'm just giving you an example off the top of my head, right? So let's say if I'm doing research into malaria in all the different states in Malaysia, and I want to go to each state and I want to take samples from different people in each state, and and then I'm going to just run it through a computer and put it on a database. I can choose to do it in different ways. I can actually take a plane and fly all over Malaysia and do this research. Alternatively, I can find people in the different states and I can say, will you do this for me? And I will give you a bit of money and then you put it on the database. And then I have done my research in a way that is less carbon intensive as opposed to if I actually went around traveling. So that's another way of thinking about. So then should the government, for instance, have policies to say how we should do our health research, especially if you think about Malaysia, where we have a federal government and you have different people in different states. So you can be kind of creative if you like, but I would suggest you select an area and you dig a little bit deeper rather than trying to hit everything at the same time. Over.
Yeah, totally agree.
Okay. Sorry, just one more thing. When you mentioned find a specific area to attack on, that would be specifying on what exactly, like looking into how government tackle one sickness in the country, or how they provide medical accommodation, or no.
Yeah. I mean, that really would be up to how creative you are feeling, right? So you could you could do many things. So for instance, you could say that I want to look at the role of ethics in guiding researchers in thinking about how they do their research. And in order to demonstrate the importance of ethics and what its role should be, I'm going to do a case study. So then you could even potentially write a case study of a researcher doing a particular type of research in Malaysia and wanting to do certain things. And then you could say, you know, it's really important for this researcher to understand the ethics of epistemic injustice, for example, that some people in marginalized communities really don't have access to certain facilities. So to ask people to come to you, and if that requires them to use a lot of, what's the word, to get on a bus or to fly on a plane to get to you, if that requires them to lose wages, that how do you frame that? So you can do that using a case study. Again, as I said, if they're going to use AI simply because it's kind of cool and he hopes that he will get his grant because he uses the word AI, but actually, if you're thinking about the impact on the climate, maybe researchers should also be thinking about that. So you could do that. You could do a case study, or you could just look at a specific disease. And you're right, you know, you could say, okay, I'm interested in Malaysia, and because we're a tropical country, and one of the things that I'm really interested is infectious diseases. So I want to think about how, how should the government decide on what infectious diseases to look at what are the guiding principles in light of climate change? And you know that with climate change, everything is getting hotter. You have more mosquitoes in more areas, that you're getting more dengue. So should the government be prioritizing dengue research? So how do you make the ethical argument that when the government sits down, so there are a million different ways you can do it. Yeah. And I know that isn't helpful, but something that you think is quite interesting and fun, and then just teasing it out.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. All the best. What area are you work? Oh, your law.
Yeah.
So,
As far as that, like, you know how most of the legal research, we always look into what are the existing policies at hand and what are other some developed countries draft their policies. It may be different, but then the challenge would be if we were to look at a better crafted policies, it may not be relevant to us as much, because considering that we want to look into the low and middle income population. But yeah, I think it's just a matter of how do we close the gaps, and that would be the challenge. But yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no, you're welcome. Sounds like you already have the beginning of an essay, right?
Yeah. Hopefully. Of course, you can look at international developments, but like as you pointed out, you should be very careful because a lot of things may not be relevant to us. Yeah. But at least some thoughts that you should be thinking about, and then you take a step forward or backward and think about our own country. And that makes your essay different from other countries, because you are really looking at Malaysian position, which is what we are interested in.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions?
Any other brave soul going to put on their video so that we can ask them questions?
So we take as silence, meaning Sharon has answered the questions that are in your mind. And if that is so, we would like to end the session here, Sharon.
Yeah. So thank you, Peksan and Komati. Thank you, everybody, for coming. It would really be great. So we really look forward to your essays. And it's such a great opportunity to meet some really amazing people. So the Global Forum is actually run by the World Health Organization. And the top experts in climate change and health will be here in Malaysia. And this is the first time the Global Forum of Bioethics and Research is in Malaysia. So to be part of that and to be able to really meet people who are trying to change the world is such a privilege for all of us. So thank you.
Yeah. So hope to receive your essays and keep in mind your deadline. Right, thank you.